Welcome. My name is Jerry Harr. I'm a professor in Florida International University's College of Business and host of the FIU Global Business Forum. The forum brings together experts from business, government, and academia to present and discuss the most salient issues confronting international business and business education today. Our 30-minute programs are widely disseminated, advancing FIU's College of Business as a thought leader in global business. The cross-border movement of goods and services continues unabated, as does the movement of people. We live in a multicultural world where by choice or necessity, millions of people cross borders every day, whether Central Americans moving to South Florida, Turks to Germany, and North Africans to Sweden. Those residing there for the long term comprise attractive markets for companies producing both goods and services. Understanding the cultural features of these consumer groups, their buying preferences, and the messaging they respond to present huge challenges and opportunities for companies. Today's session of the FIU Global Business Forum will tackle this important issue, examining cross-cultural communications in the 21st century. To do so, we are fortunate to have with us today two experts in multicultural marketing and advertising. Lisa Poloni, the Communications Director for the Americas at Microsoft, is with us. She comes from Mondelez and Avon as well. And we also have with us Michael Valdes-Fauli, the President and CEO of Pinta USA, whose clients besides Microsoft include firms such as Heineken, T-Mobile, American Express, and the National Football League. So let's begin. Let me start with a question for both of you. How has the increase in multicultural demographics worldwide impacted marketing strategies and advertising messaging?
Thank you, Jerry, for having both of us. It's an exciting honor to participate in this forum. I think it's fair to say globalization has led to, as you put out at the top of this interview, challenges and opportunities, but focusing mainly on the opportunities that exist. There's a much more diverse society where there's a sharing of language, of culture, and that kind of dynamic is thrilling because you're going to get a lot more, not only cross-border, but even within the same borders, a lot more diversity of thought. In the United States, for example, one of the things we focus on at Pinta is the US Hispanic or Latino consumer. And, it's very interesting. People often refer to the Hispanic market, but really that's a misnomer because even that is diverse. It's a subsegment of different demographics and countries of origin. It could be first generation, unacculturated Mexicans who are Spanish dominant on the West Coast, or second, third generation bilingual, bicultural Caribbeans in Miami or New York. Kind of everything in between that diaspora is where the fun stuff lies.
Okay. For Lisa, please explain the importance of practicing cross-regional communications within a company like Microsoft.
Yeah, so first, thank you so much, Jerry, for the opportunity to be here today, and also Mike for the invitation. So the first thing I'd like to pave the road a little bit on how this journey started within Microsoft is that I have to be very grateful for the company that gave us the opportunity to outreach and do some work with this audience. Basically, if you have a great idea, if you have a proven business case, they're going to be hearing you and say, okay, go ahead, let's try to take some risks and do something new. So this basically happened 5 years ago. I was managing the communications for Latin America, based out of here in Miami, and also for Canada, a region that we call Americas. And since we are producing lots of content in Spanish for the countries in Latin America, I was just debating with my manager. I said, why not we use some of these amazing stories, some amazing content we have to outreach audiences within the United States, in this case, the US Latino audience. And then happens that 5 years ago, we kick off. It was more or less a kind of a startup. We started to get lots of data from Spanish associations, Nielsen, all type of source that you can imagine, just to have a better understanding of this audience, of how we could outreach them. And since then we start to produce some tailor-made communication material to outreach to them. So this is pretty much how we started. It was just an idea 5 years ago, and it's kind of still a startup. It's still something brand new that we are learning every day. It's an amazing journey. It's been an amazing journey.
If we were to take a look at that, Luisa, say 24, 36 months out, what do you see are interesting trends in regional communications that may be game changers for a company like yours and your competitors as well?
Yes, I think it's the media landscape changed a lot. It's something that we all can see, that we completely changed the dynamic, which made us. I remember a couple of years ago, we usually do a communications plan that we execute throughout the whole year. Nowadays, my team and I, we basically have to revisit this plan every 3 months because the landscape and the challenges outside, not only in the United States, but in all countries in Latin America and also in Canada, changes so fast that we need to be constant adapting messaging to this new more world with more influencers, with less probably traditional media. So it's been something very challenging. And also in this past year with this pandemic thing that put all of us in this virtual world, it was kind of the cherry on the top, a little bit more challenge to manage this full landscape of complexity.
I see. Mike, you mentioned that we know there is no monolithic Hispanic market. Puerto Ricans, Dominicans, Colombians, the U.S. Hispanic market, just very great deal of variety there. Mm-hmm. But even within those markets, how does this vary by generation? We've got Generation X, sure. Y, Z, and then you fold in gender as another factor there. We can't put all this in one basket. What are some of the similarities and differences as you're developing campaigns, marketing, and advertising aimed at these different segments, even within a unified market like, say, the Colombian market?
Sure. Great question. So before we talk about the disparity, let's talk about what makes them all in the same basket, and that unifying force is language. We kind of normally carve out Brazil as a little bit of a different animal, but all of the other countries in Latin America and often Spain, if those people immigrate to the United States and then become, in some capacity residents or citizens here, we call those U.S. Hispanic. And that market, just in sheer numbers, is really quite remarkable. It's about 60 million people, which represents 18% of the total U.S. population. So just to put that in perspective, that would make it the 13th largest country in the world by population, and the second largest Spanish-speaking country in the world. So U.S. Hispanic is bigger than all of Spain or all of Argentina or all of Colombia. So what marketer or agency could ignore 20% of America? But there are differences, as you point out, and I think that's been one of the challenges and really exciting opportunities for us at Pinta, and certainly with the collaboration with Microsoft. You're often going after these subsegments to engage them in a culturally relevant way, and that has to have nuance. So, for our other client, Heineken, we are targeting mostly in Florida with English language work, second and third generation Hispanics, but the same parent company of Heineken owns Tecate beer, and that is all Spanish language, West Coast, Mexican outreach. It's two, beers in a bottle from the same company targeting that same one niche market, but dramatically different strategies in order to do so.
Right, so you can get a multicultural hangover, depending upon
no
whether
comment. No comment.
Okay, well, that wasn't all that funny. Anyway, thank you for laughing anyway. So here's the thing. Don't you find in certain markets, certain products like Tecate and say Heineken, a kind of cannibalization of brand or not?
No, I rather refer to a rising tide raising all ships. We find that the market is growing exponentially. So it's not only a big market today, but a hugely disproportionate amount of every birth in this country is Hispanic. So it's only going to get bigger. So, the companies that are trying to, with cultural nuance and respect, speak to this market are going to benefit over the long term. And I don't see it cannibalizing their market. It's a new one from which they could benefit. The key is to do it in a way that is, based on doing your homework, and it's based on insights, not stereotypes. It's based on kind of culture and not language. So it's fast moving. Lisa's absolutely right. You got to take a look at the strategy and the data almost monthly. But if you do your homework, it's an exciting future for marketers.
Lisa, you want to comment a little further on what Michael said? Give us your take.
I love what Michael said, and it's a completely tailor-made. You do not have a one-size-fits-all approach, and I love what he just said. And we did lots of research together with Pinta, and we pick up a lot of data just to understand what speaks to this audience, because we could not have a silver bullet or a one-size-fits-all approach. And then we discovered that for this audience, they have a kind of what we call passion points, which is pretty much related to family, culture, and education. Those are the three key pillars that move this audience. So they are very Latinos in US, very family oriented. On the cultural standpoint, they respect a lot the roots, the place where they came from, and they keep those traditions here in US with the food, with the editorial calendar, the holidays, and also education is another very strong indicator for these audiences. So understanding their passion, it was much easier for us to tailor the message to outreach and to talk to them. So it's not kind of just one more GTM and just launch it and one size fits all. Sometimes the approach is almost in a tailor-made, and I'd not say 101, but one to few instead of something very broad that you just talk to everybody at the same time. It's something very well designed. And again, just repeating that because of the challenge that we are seeing outside, these messages needs to be revisited all the time, just to make sure that we are reflecting the reality where we all are. Okay.
Professor Har, let me just build on that, if I may.
Sure.
I think Lisa very insightfully pointed out some of the kind of qualitative attributes. But one of the questions I often get in this business is, why do we even need U.S. Hispanic marketing? Isn't everyone assimilating into this country? And it's a fair question, because if you look back the turn of the last century, you had Italian immigrants and Russian immigrants and Irish immigrants, and there's not today Irish American marketing. There's just kind of Anglo and Hispanic. And I think the reason for that is quite compelling. For one thing, there's a geographic proximity to their country of origin. You're not crossing the Atlantic Ocean to get here. You're crossing a border that abuts your home country in many cases. Secondly, the advent of technology, where you can talk to your loved ones back home 100 times a day on a number of different platforms, including some from Microsoft. So that stickiness, if you will, of language and culture perpetuates. And third, there's dedicated media in this country to the Hispanic. You can turn on Univision and Telemundo and watch 24/7, 365 new programming in Spanish in the United States. So the confluence of those factors, I think, make this a pretty different immigrant experience.
Yeah, also we got to keep in mind, in terms of the immigrant experience in the United States, the biggest flow was from 1880 to 1920. And after that, you didn't see a surge of, say, in the 40s or the 50s or the 60s or 70s, Italian immigrants, for example, or Irish immigrants. It came in this one huge, and there wasn't the technology there, as Michael points out. Interesting statistic that preparing for this that I was able to find is that as of end of 2019, 133 million multicultural Americans are living in the United States. So that's around 38%. So if you follow the trend more and more, and with the low cost of transportation, people being mobile for their jobs, technology, we're all going to become multiculturalists in the next 20 or 30 years, will be the majority.
Right. Well, I think that's an exciting eventuality. And not only will we become multiculturalists, but we will become multicultural. Even the Anglo-Saxons among us, you're going to start to see a new mainstream of America over time, which is quite beautiful.
Right. Speaking of multiculturalism, not far away from that is a more diverse workforce, more diverse consumer group. Now, I know, Lisa, how do you support Microsoft's diversity and inclusion multicultural programs, of which I know you have many, and they're pretty well recognized and applauded? Could you go into that a little bit for us and how that
Yes,
relates to your?
yes. Yeah, Microsoft, they support and they have a big array of diversity and inclusion global programs that they are cascading to all the employees and to externally when we have some storytelling opportunities as well. And basically my team and I here in Miami, we are 100% focus on the Latino audience. That's what we kind of create this specialization. But of course, we engage with other movements that around D&I happening in the corporate side.
Okay, give us an example. I want an example of one of your product lines, one of your campaigns that has a multicultural dimension to it, and from the beginning to the end, or unless it's continuing now, how it's working for you. What have you seen as been some of the challenges, and what have been some of the breakthroughs that have come out of that you could cite as best practice examples? I know I'm putting you on the spot, but that's what this is all about.
Yes, no, thank you. That's a great question. What we can see, let me take this year with the pandemic, that everybody working from home, what happened to our lives, which put pretty much, I think, all technology companies on the spot, and mainly what represented for Microsoft was the working from home and the necessity to do this type of connection, and using Teams, for example, is one of our products. So we could see an amazing adoption around this audience. We are specifically here talking about the US Latino. I do not have any marketing data because that's not my area. We are in the PR and in the communications, but I can tell from the storytelling perspective what we did, what was the strategy. Since we are all passionate about storytelling at Microsoft, we all love to tell stories. We take a lot of workshops just to be great at that. And we have that in our DNA and in our blood. And the other thing we are passionate about is to celebrate customer success. So every time that we see a customer adopting our technology and sharing that, for us, we are super proud to showcase that. So this pretty much was the strategy that we use instead of just talking about product features, what you have. Of course, marketing folks, they take care of the product features. But my team, from the storytelling perspective, we decided to focus on the Latino community, on how mainly the small and medium business, which is the vast majority of small and medium business in the United States, are owned by Latinos, how they benefit from using our technology, they succeed and they thrive. So we have a beautiful collection of customer stories. If you go to the Microsoft.com, you can find the Latino blog with an array of customer stories, like small and medium business succeeding, mainly in this past year with the COVID and pandemic and everything, how they thrive, how an owner of a fitness gym in Miami downtown could keep going, doing his classes through Teams, how a florist shop could completely change her business model from have a florist place where people then usually go there to buy flowers, how she just move it to 100% online. And then we have a bunch of cases showing how Microsoft enable, how our technology enable and help them to succeed in challenging times. So I just like to tell you that it's less from a marketing approach, because this is pretty much not what we do, it's not our expertise, but from the storytelling perspective, we have amazing stories and very proud of many different cases that we have published in our blog.
Very good. Michael, question for you. Actually, it's a question for both of you, and I think Lisa touched on it. How has COVID-19 impacted your business and marketing, communications, and advertising in general, and looking beyond Microsoft?
Sure. I can kick it off. So, the agency world, I mean, we do a ton of PR, but also advertising, digital, social. So, in the agency world, collaboration and kind of dynamic energy has been one of the driving forces historically. And so in the wake of COVID, with the help of products like those from Microsoft, I would say productivity has been extremely high and nothing is falling through the cracks. and we're getting the job done. But perhaps, and I'm speaking for myself here, enjoyment levels aren't quite where they could be if you're still traveling to see a client or preparing for an in-person new business pitch or doing a team brainstorm or happy hour. So part of the allure of an agency is the creative energy you get from interacting with people in person. But the reality is the times called for safety, and you needed sort of technology to help you get through it. And we've certainly been not only surviving, but thriving as a result.
Lisa, you want to comment further?
Yeah, I'm not going to be repeating. I completely agree with what Mike just said, mainly related to the personal connections that we miss a lot to go to the events. We miss a lot to meet with each other. We miss a lot going to the office and meeting my team and greeting people and get together. But on the other hand, from the company standpoint, I'm in the company, I mean, total 10 years. I had two journeys. First I started in Brazil for 6-7 years, and then here in the United States for the past 6 years in Microsoft. I had some previous experience. We are a remote company. We are remote work, remote everything by default. Okay, we do technology to enable people to work from wherever they want to. So this is something that we always leave at Microsoft. For example, if I want to just tell my managers, said, hey, the next couple 6 weeks, 2 months, I'm going to be working from Brazil, for example, because I just need to be there. It's super okay, So this part of the business does not impact it. We did not feel like we had any type of disruption, because this is the essence and the core of who we are and what we do. So we have that same amazing level of productivity, deliverables, and everything. Like I said, besides the emotional and personal connection to the customers, among me, my folks in the agency, my team, of course, this has been brutal, right? But from the work we do, I don't feel like we changed a lot. We have been working like that for a while, for a while. Yeah.
I would just add one more thing, not about how you get through with technology, but more about kind of what the strategy and messaging should be during these, kind of unprecedented times. And so, when you used to be able to just extol the benefits of your product or service versus the competition, now you have this added layer of societal needs and the reality of what's happening on the ground. At the beginning, it gets poked fun at a little bit, but at the very beginning, every television ad started with, in these unprecedented times. And, you kind of have to be a company that acknowledges what's happening before you talk about yourself. And so we feel a responsibility to get that right and to make sure the tone of what we're doing matches the reality of what's happening.
Yeah. Talking about an issue sort of related to that and such with the messaging is by generation, whether it's older generation, younger generation, there seems to be this social consciousness, this awareness on the part of consumers that want to see both in the products and in the messaging, a sense of some kind of worth or dedication beyond the product itself. There's a collective development among consumers of a social consciousness. Like, what is this product doing for the disadvantaged? What is this doing for the environment? Could you both elaborate on that through your product messaging, if you will, how you're addressing those?
Lisa, do you want to go first, or I'm happy to?
Yeah, it's I could be here until tomorrow morning answering this question with all the array of programs and community engagement and sustainability and all the things that we are being announcing in, I think, forever, since I started in the company back in 2000, So there is a huge collection of corporate social responsibility that I would invite you guys just to visit our newest launches in the Microsoft website instead of just be telling a collection of examples. But I completely agree with you, Jerry, that nowadays it's unacceptable just a brand, just being a brand without a connection to the impact where you are operating, that you give back to the society, you give back to the community, and mainly to the employees. And Microsoft values that a lot, the relationship with all employees around the world, which also is part of this ecosystem, But I'm going to be more than happy if you guys would like to visit and check our programs in the website.
I would just add at a kind of broader level, Professor Har, you and I have talked about Porter and Kramer's Harvard Business Review article called Shared Value.
Right.
And that's a fascinating development because if you go back a couple decades, big companies were basically doing nothing, writ large in terms of giving back. And then that developed into a conscience, which was direly needed, but it became, a ceremony where you blow up a check and you sort of check a box on your minimum requirements and you go about your business. But I think what's been quite lovely is that companies now are doing much more to give back, but aren't having to feel guilty about somehow finding a way that makes sense and could potentially benefit their business at the same time. So companies that employ shared value strategies do the most and best work for the society, but at the same time, hopefully help grow their bottom line at the same time.
Yeah, thank you. Well, actually, it's ironic. I'm working on a book on that very topic on shared value. And even with regard to ESG, which is related to it, it's not the same thing. Nonetheless, that those companies that engage in those practices actually financially perform better for their shareholders than those that do not. How about some of your other clients, Mike? How are they seeing how technology is changing messaging, advertising, what they're asking you to do with regard to communications? Do you have to educate them on those topics, or are they pretty well up to date and they're asking you to package services for them around their knowledge that exists already on those topics?
Well, I think that the question of technology and its impact on corporate marketing is a good one. Some of it is interesting and compelling because you can target and make the ROI much more efficient because of technology in terms of who you're communicating with. The downside is that some of the creativity that existed is now balanced by the algorithmic, programmatic, data-driven approach. So Mad Men has often become Math Men in a way these days. But it's a sink or swim environment, and good agencies have to keep up.
Okay, all right. Lisa, do you have any final comments on multicultural advertising and marketing and where you see trends developing over the next 12 to 24 months as it impacts Microsoft?
Yes, no, thank you so much. First, thank you so much for the opportunity for being here again. It was a pleasure to connect with all of you. As a challenge and trends, we are keeping partnering with Mike and Pinta just to all the time be ahead of the game on the media, the influencers, the trends, and just to make sure that we adjust our strategy accordingly. We have very exciting news moments coming in the next couple of months for Microsoft, and I'm going to be very happy working with my team to keep including this so important audience, which is the US Latinos, for our outreach program in communication. So exciting news ahead, and let's keep adjusting as the challenges are happening outside, in the world outside,
Sounds great. Mike, any final comments?
Just to thank you for including us. It's been a fascinating dialogue. I've certainly learned a lot from you, Dr. Har, over the years, and have really enjoyed collaborating with Microsoft and Lisa. So getting the group together was a lot of fun. Thank you.
I want to thank you both. I've learned a lot too, and I really appreciate your time, and I wish you both well in your companies, and keep healthy, stay safe. Thank you.
Likewise.
Thank you. Thank you.